to who were not able to make it out this evening. So just want to give you that as a heads up. If you don't want to turn your video on later on, there'll be an opportunity to kind of interact a little bit, both in the chat and maybe even on your video screens. So just be aware of that as you are diving into that. So everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We are excited to have you guys out. And I'm fanboying a little bit because when Gail called me this afternoon and she was like, hey, I really need you to host tonight with Tori, I was like, absolutely. I was super stoked because I've already got my tickets to go see her when she comes to Raleigh next week for my wife's birthday, nonetheless. So, and we've already pre-ordered our book and we're super excited to have a copy of it. And I've been following Tori on social media for quite some time and just getting to hear more about her story as we've had our own foster care journey, my wife and I being a licensed foster family here in North Carolina. But we'll jump more into that in just a minute. I'm Douglas Price. I am one of the board members at large for FFA&C. And just very quickly, Foster Family Alliance of North Carolina, we're a nonprofit family-led organization that supports children and youth in foster care. And we are dedicated to those families and professionals that care for them. And we do that in a variety of ways. That's everything from professional development and speaking engagements like you're seeing tonight, to other community interactions that we also have across the state. And so if you want to get to know a little bit more about us, I'm going to make sure to put that link in the chat for you so that you can look us up after we are done here this evening. Please feel free to check us out. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of our board members. You can also reach out to Gail Osborne, who is our executive director. So I'm going to turn this over in just a minute to Tori Hope Peterson, who is here. Tori, if you'll give us a quick wave and say hello. Tori, we are so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
Absolutely. And we are certainly going to probably hear a little bit more about your upcoming book that is coming out or is already out. Sorry if I haven't said that. I don't have my own physical copy yet.
No, it hasn't come out yet. We have one more week.
Okay, so we are getting geared up and excited, and I know you're getting ready for your book tour, I believe, starting next week as well. And then we also have Rachel Smith, who is here with us tonight. Rachel, if you want to give a wave and a hello.
Hello.
And she is from Hope and Vine, and we're going to hear more from Rachel towards the end of this program tonight. But without further ado, I'm going to stop talking because we're not here to hear me talk. We are here for Tori. And Tori, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you. We'll let you take the wheels and run with it. As Tori is talking tonight, just a quick housekeeping tool. One, please make sure you're staying on mute until asked to come off mute if once we get into that. Since our group is small enough tonight, Tori, I think we can engage a little bit more with a free flow of coming off microphone to ask questions if people are comfortable once you're ready to engage and interact, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
If you are not comfortable coming off your microphone, though, you can always use the chat box, and I'll be monitoring the chat box, as will some of our other FFA members as well, and we can toss those questions over to Tori on your behalf if you toss them in the chat box as well. So Tori, without further ado, take it away.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's such a pleasure and honor. And thank you to Hope and Vine. Rachel, she's the one who really has made all of this possible. And Hope and Vine is hosting my official book launch party on August 30th. So if you guys are local to Raleigh, North Carolina, I would be so happy if you guys would join us. But I'm Tori Hope Peterson, and whenever anyone does an introduction to me as nice as Doug did, it's so awkward because you're like, it's like when people sing happy birthday to you. You're like, do I like sing along with them? Do I start cheering for myself? Or do you just like sit back and sit here awkwardly? So thank you, Doug, for such a nice introduction. I'm here tonight and I share from the perspective of a former foster youth. I first entered care when I was 3 years old. And at that point, I did not want to go into the foster care system. I loved my mom. The lifestyle that we were living was unstable, but to me as a 3, 4-year-old, it didn't make any difference. I love my mom and I wanted to be with her. And so when I first went to the foster care system, I was very upset. And I was very happy to be reunified with my mom. I was very happy that the foster care system did what it is created to do, which is reunify families. So I was reunified with my mom just months later. I wasn't even in the system for a year. But as I got older, my mom's mental illness, it began to get worse, and the abuse and the neglect in our home, it just increased. Everything got worse. And so that resulted in me and my sister, who is 10 years younger than me, going into the foster care system again when I was an adolescent. And I was very happy to go into the foster care system that time. I thought, okay, this is my chance for me and my sister to have a normal life, to escape the abuse and to escape the chaos and the neglect. But within a month of my sister and I being in that home together, we were separated. And I went to go live in a group home, and she stayed in that foster home. That was probably one of the most devastating things that I've ever experienced throughout my journey in foster care, and really throughout my 26 years of living. I was holding my sister, and I thought I was taking her with me, and it ended up that she was staying there, and I was leaving. And after I left that residential group home, I moved throughout 10 different homes. But when I entered that residential group home, I thought, okay, I do not belong here. Like, these girls, they belong here, but I don't. And through my journey there, I had to attend mandatory counseling, and I had to attend mandatory group therapy. And during the group therapy sessions, I had to listen to the other girls' stories, really for the first time, because I thought that I was better than them. So I didn't think that there was any need to listen to them. But I had to listen to their stories for the first time. And I understood then that our stories were very similar. And it made me wonder how similar I actually was to them. And when I heard their story, I realized that it also reflected my mom's story. And I knew that we were all there because hurt people hurt people. Our parents hurt us because they were hurt, and those girls were hurting. And they had hurt me in the home. It was just a chaotic home in the way that we all hurt each other. And that was the moment that I was like, okay, hurt people hurt people. And that's the reason that we can have empathy. But heal people help heal people. And I want to be the latter. And so I started to take therapy in that group home very seriously, started going to church. And even though I moved throughout 10 more homes, I really held on to that value of hearing other people's stories. I knew that stories had value because it was really hearing those girls' stories for the first time that I understood how their trauma related to mine, how their lives related to mine. And I started just listening to other people's stories. And now what I do is I help people tell their stories. I amplify the voices of youth in foster care, of people who come from hard places. After I emancipated the foster care system, I had a mentor, my track coach, who ended up just pouring into me and becoming one of my best friends. The community that we lived in, they said that I was going to be a statistic in foster care, and it was very discouraging, but my track coach, he spoke life over me, and I ended up becoming a 4-time state champion in track and field that year. That allowed me to go to college on a full ride scholarship and obtain a bachelor's degree and be a part of the 3% of foster youth to graduate college. And that really is, because of the way that the church and my track coach poured into me. And I think it's so important that we as if you're a believer, if you're on this hearing, you're a believer, it's so important that we know that the Holy Spirit dwells within us. And because of that, we have the power to step into the most broken spaces and make them whole. We have the power to step into the most corrupt spaces and bring healing to them, because we have a Holy Spirit who literally dwells within us. And as I have stepped into this space, I have been helping youth in foster care, youth who have emancipated the foster care system, tell their stories. And my husband and I have been foster parents as well. We have 2 biological children. I'm also a kinship care provider right now, because the sister I was separated from now lives with me. We truly have seen God redeem all things and bring everything full circle, and everything good in my story, I truly give him all the glory. He's just been so good to me. And as I've stepped into this space of helping others tell their stories, I also wanted to tell my story. And so I wrote a book called Fostered, One Woman's Powerful Story of Finding Faith in Family Through Foster Care. That is the book that Hope and Vine will be throwing a party for, and that they are supporting. And I encourage you, even if you want to come to the book launch party, to order it, because it is selling way faster than we thought. And we have already sold out of our first print, and they need to know how many to order the second go round. So please go order it. And that is like the overarching like theme of my story. But I love answering questions because as a speaker, as a communicator, it's very important to me that I actually communicate what you guys want to hear, and that it isn't just like me monologuing to you, but it's truly us learning and growing together. So please, I love to say that I'm an open book. I'm very open. I believe that the story that God has given me, if it's not told, it is wasted. And so please do not hold back in your questions. Please feel free to ask anything. And I'd be happy to answer your questions. And I truly am so grateful that all of you guys are here on this webinar so that we can learn and grow together in our foster care journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tori. Before we begin to jump into additional questions, I actually am going to pivot us with kind of a framework question to elaborate, or ask you to elaborate a little further. You talked a lot about storytelling being a key part of what you do and kind of what your mission and focus is. So I'm curious if you can elaborate a little bit more about what does storytelling look like in the space or spaces that you are residing in, that you are communing in with these children that are in foster care, or these teenagers, or these adults that are still a part or coming out of the system?
Yeah, well, when you're in the foster care system, you often are not listened to. When you're in the foster care system, there are a lot of people who are in control of your life. And when you're a kid, that's just the case. But it's really amplified in foster care because it's a lot of strangers that are in control of your life, and you want to have a say about your life, but oftentimes you don't. So when it comes to helping youth tell their story, it has so much to do with healing. Because what happens when we heal? Well, first off, let's talk about trauma, right? Like when we have trauma, when we have a traumatic experience, it pains us, it hurts us. And that pain, if we don't heal it, it just grows. So how we minimize that trauma is that we have to contradict it. We have to have experiences that directly contradict the traumatic experience. So in foster care, the traumatic thing is not being heard, is not your voice not being valued. And sometimes you as a person not even being valued. And so when youth in foster care, youth who have experienced foster care, begin to tell their stories, whether that's on their social media, or I tell them just start with a friend, just start with a family member. And I created an easy guide that I give to people for free on how to tell your story. It's like 7 steps, and it asks them questions, and it's just a guide that gives them an outline of how they can start. But I tell them to start with a friend, start with a family member, and then ask them feedback. What did you learn from that? And for them to ask themselves, what do I want people to get out of my story? Because really what our story should be doing is serving others. It should be a way that we can be generous, and a way that we can love others. But when we do that, what we see is that it also heals us, because we're heard like we never were before, and we are valued. Our voices are valued, and sometimes even us as people are valued even more so as people hear our stories.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to our audience to let them come in and begin asking questions.
Amazing.
I'm also creating a side pool of questions in case we sit in the awkward silence. And to be fair, I was a teacher for 13 years until this year, so I don't mind the awkward silence for the rest of you in the audience.
And if people don't want to use their microphone, they can put their questions in the chat. I always feel better putting my questions in the chat, because you never know if someone's gonna like talk over you or something.
So I do have one question that's already come through in the chat. So what were some of the reasons why there were 10 foster placements?
That is always like the first question asked. I should have actually just answered that. So there was a lot of reasons. I actually have a reel on social media that goes through all of the reasons. And I'll try and do a quick bit, but sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes I didn't follow the rules. Like one of the rules when I was in the foster care system was that if I wanted to ride in a car with someone, they had to have a background check, proof of license, and insurance. And so I was like the only 17-year-old riding the bus to school. And I didn't want to ride the bus to school because I was like, I'm 17, I should have my license, but I couldn't get my license because I was youth in foster care. So instead of like riding the bus, I lived in a neighborhood and I had one of my friends come and pick me up and drive me to school. My foster parents found out and they kicked me out. So sometimes it's things like that, like not following rules. And sometimes it's like bigger, like sometimes there was one home where I broke like a really big, bad rule. If you want to read my book, you will know that big, bad rule, but it's not always appropriate to share in spaces like these. And another reason is that a lot of foster parents, they go into foster care because they want to take in kids who are younger. I went into the foster care system when I was 12 and up, that second time around. And so the foster care community, a large part of it is the infertility community. And so there are a lot of couples who are hoping to make their family whole that way, which is a beautiful way to make your family whole. But at the same time, if you look at the foster care system, you see that the majority of youth are older who are waiting to be adopted. And so I was just older. And the last reason I'll share with you is that I grew up in the foster care system in Ohio. There's a very unique plan here called a permanent placement living arrangement. And I had that plan over my case, which meant that my mom, she had parental rights, but I was in permanent custody of the state. This is like seriously such a unique case. My mom really didn't want me to be adopted because she didn't want to, I think she just didn't want to lose control. She didn't want to lose her rights. But again, that's a thing where like no one ever asked me or heard my voice on the matter, which was very sad because I would have loved to be adopted. I can just go down many children in foster care have various diagnoses. Did you have a diagnosis? I did not have a diagnosis while I was in the foster care system. I probably could have been diagnosed with RADS. Now that I know more about RADS, I probably could have been diagnosed with that at one point. But the beautiful thing about RADS, we know now that that is a diagnosis that children and adults can actually overcome. And so I do believe that with healthy relationships, with just learning healthy ways of coping, whether that's through working out or writing prayer, being in my community, through those things, I don't feel like I would have RADS anymore. I never had the official diagnosis, and I went through years of counseling. I'm actually really surprised that I never had a diagnosis, but I think I could. If I would diagnose myself as a kid, would have probably diagnosed myself with RADS. How do you get a copy of your storytelling sheet? If you send me, so you have to order a copy of Fostered, and then you email me your confirmation code, and I will send you the free copy to your email.
So I'm going to put a quick pin on that, and Tori, maybe you can speak a little more. So because of our audience that we have here tonight, Foster Family Alliance is actually going to be ordering each person that's on tonight a copy of your book directly from you that we're going to be able to mail to them. So is there a secondary way that they can also
Yes, that's so sweet. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to send it to Doug or whoever's in charge, and they're going to send it to your email, because I'm sure that they have your emails because you got the Zoom link, right? Is that good?
Yep. And so the caveat to that, y'all, is you got to fill out your eval at the end of this evening so that you get a copy of both the book and the storytelling sheet. That's the caveat. We'll go over that at the end. Sorry, Tori, didn't mean to cut it.
No, that's That's so great. That's so sweet. I didn't even know you were doing that. So thank you. When you think of the best foster homes, what comes to mind? Oh, I think I like swallowed some kind of air, some kind of dust. So hold on, I'm gonna cough. Okay, maybe that'll work. When you think of the best foster homes, what comes to mind? Okay, I have so much that comes to mind. Letting me be in family pictures was a huge one. I have a nonprofit called the Beloved Initiative, and that's one of our biggest initiatives, is offering foster families free family pictures all over the nation, catalyzing photographers, so that this is something that foster families and adoptive families have easy access to, because we know that family pictures are like a huge investment, and you don't know who's going to be in your family next month as a foster parent, or even next week, or even the next day. But when you're a kid, it is so important that you see your picture on the wall, that you know that, because when you're a foster kid, you hear that you belong, but there are a lot of indicators in your life that actually tell you you don't. And so we want to create spaces and places as foster parents, as kinship providers, that actually tell kids that they actually do belong. And so taking pictures, putting them on the wall is a huge thing. Letting me decorate my room, like not just decorate it, but paint it, to me, that seemed so permanent. And when they allowed me to do it, I was like, oh, wow, they must actually think that I'm going to be here for a while. Like, they must actually not think that I'm going to move like next week. And so for me, that created like security if they let me paint my room, because it felt like they were actually going to try to keep me there for a while. Letting me go on family vacations and not sending me to respite. That was a really huge one. Again, a lot of this is like has to do with inclusivity and not being treated differently than biological kids. So like it's very different when a mom and dad go on a trip for their marriage, right? And they're explaining that to the kids. Like, we're pouring into our marriage so that we can pour into you. I had foster parents who explained that to me very clearly, and I very much appreciated that. And then there were foster parents who I would go to respite, and they would go on a week vacation with their kids. I know that that is a lot of money, that it's a sacrifice, but at the same time, that is what our stipend is for. As a foster parent myself, I never talk about my stipend around my kids. And if I do, like if someone is talking to me about it, if another foster parent and my kids are around and the foster parent's like, oh, that stipend just isn't enough, which is what I hear all the time. I say, oh, I think it's more than enough. Because actually, one, I actually do think that, and two, I don't ever want my children to feel like a burden in my life, because they aren't, they're a blessing. And there's so many feelings of when you grow up in foster care of feeling like a burden, because you're always that extra. No matter what you do, like your kid is going to feel like a burden. And so there are things that we can do, I think, to alleviate that. And so think about your language, think about the way you speak about your stipend, the children in your home and their parents. Speak about them positively, because the children are often listening more than you think they are. What little things can foster families do to make kids feel welcome? Okay, I think I kind of did that. Another one I'll add, though, is if you're taking in girls who are like 9, 10 and up, sorry if this makes any of the guys feel uncomfortable, feminine products, put them like in a care package on their bed. Do not make them come to you and ask for them. Make them easily accessible. Because no 9, 10, 11-year-old wants to go to a complete stranger the first week of meeting you and ask you for feminine products. So if you can make things like that might make kids feel uncomfortable to come to you, easily accessible, that is going to, in the end, make them feel more comfortable around you. Being a childhood trauma survivor myself, it has been hard for me to tell my full story in fear of being disrespectful to my parents. Yeah, has that ever been a barrier for you in telling your story? If so, how did you overcome that? Well, Stacey, I love that you are considering other people. I think that is really beautiful. And one of my mentors told me once, and I think as a believer, as someone who wants to walk, your faith out in love, this is a really tricky thing. And I think you have to overall, like, you have to pray and you have to discern with the Lord what he wants you to share and what he doesn't want you to share and how he wants you to share it. And that's why I tell people just to start sharing their story. And I always say start in writing and then start telling people, because the more you write, the more you share, the more you learn how you want to articulate and communicate your story in a way that protects people. I can protect my abusers and telling my story way better than I could protect them and tell the story than I did 5 years ago. And that's because I've learned how to tell it and I've learned how to respect them. But another thing that one of my mentors told me, and again, this is something that I think you have to discern, is that if someone doesn't want to be a villain in your story, then they shouldn't have been the villain in your life. And that too is true for us, right? If we don't want to be the bad person that someone else writes about, then don't be the bad person in that person's life. And I think it's a huge motivator I always think about when as a storyteller, I think about what stories are people going to tell about me. I want them to say that when they met me, I was a person who loved them well. I was a person who listened to them well. I was a person who showed up for them when no one else would. And so think about the narrative that you want people to tell about you too. Because I think as you discern that and as you learn more about who you want to be and how you want to communicate your story, the better you get at protecting people, but also telling the truth so that you're helping other people. Yes. Oh, wow. You have a PPLA in North Carolina. I have a links coordinator and I work with youth 13 to 21, and I have a desire to empower them and make them feel like they have a voice. Any suggestions? Yes, I love that you want to do that. I think one of the things that would have really helped me as someone in foster care was seeing other people in my shoes who also overcame. And I think there are actually so many amazing figures in the foster care system who are overcoming. If someone wants to put this in the chat, because I don't think I can type and talk at the same time, I'm not that talented, but there is an organization called Unbelievably Resilient, and we are a team of 12 former foster youth who tell our stories. And when I love being a part of this organization, because I always think about if I would have had this, if I would have seen this when I was in care, I just think that I would have been so much more inspired and I would have had so much more hope. And it was actually I saw a youth in foster care on Instagram doing advocacy on Capitol Hill. And then I applied for the internship that she was doing. And that's how I started my advocacy journey. That really was a huge start in it, was seeing someone else do it. I was like, oh wait, that's what I want to do. Because the next question is, did you have a GAL? Yes, I had a GAL. That was the only way I had ever heard the word advocate. Her job was to advocate for what was in the best interest of the child. And I was like, oh, I knew when I was 12, 13, I wanted to be an advocate. But I thought that the only way I could do that, when you look at job descriptions as a kid, you just look at jobs, people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you look at firefighter, policeman, cook, you just look at job titles. And so I was like, okay, I can only be a GAL, because I didn't see any other job that embodied advocate. And then I saw that other former foster youth doing the work on Capitol Hill, and I was like, whoa, that's what I want to do. Started there, and then God just evolved all of it to what it is now. But show kids people who look like them, people who they aspire to be. And the other thing I would say, the last thing I'd say on this is offer them opportunities. So when I was I think I was 14 or 15, I was living in the foster care system, going to church, and then my foster mom ended up taking me to a gala. I had no idea what I was doing at this gala, but the executive director came up to me. They were raising money for kids in foster care. They were a nonprofit that served the foster care community. She came up to me and she said, I want you to write on this sign what you want people to know about you being in foster care. And I was like, I want people to stop stereotyping me. And she said, okay, right, stop stereotyping me. And so I that's what I wrote. And then I just stood on the stage with the sign for like 30 minutes while people walked by me. I stood there as people sat in their seats. And I mean, people were like crying, and there was like 3 words on a sign. And that was like, there was a very, like, I just remember this very concrete seed that God planted in my heart that said, you have a story to tell. Like, you have something to say that can influence people. You know, people were convicted in that moment. They were moved, and I had no idea why. But I know now, as I know more about the system and how my story has evolved. But that opportunity really is one of the reasons why I do what I do now. My GAL was my favorite person in my caseload. I think they are the most important person in a child's caseload. I have written policy on CASAs and GAL. I feel so passionately about them. My first GAL ever walked into the courtroom, and my mom harassed her, like heavily harassed her. And she threw the folder down and said, your case is too crazy. Your mom is crazy, and no one's going to take this case. She walked out. The court date was canceled, and I just had to go into the foster care. So that's the day I went into the foster care system. And then the court date was rescheduled. I had a new GAL who came to me, and she looked at me and she said, I know what your last GAL said, and I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay. She was the only person in my caseload, through caseworkers, social workers, independent living workers, and foster parents. She was the only person who stayed throughout my entire case. She kept her promise, and that meant a lot to me. And she really did. She advocated for what was in my best interest, and I always felt like she was one of the only people in my case that heard me. Another thing I'll say about CASAs and GALs, they don't have a conflict of interest. I'm sorry if there's any caseworkers on here. I am not knocking at your jobs, but the reality is caseworkers and foster parents have a conflict of interest. They want to do what's best for the child, but they work for the county and the state. And the county and the state has things that they have requirements. They have liabilities and legalities, and the GAL and CASAs do not have. They do, but not to the extent of the county and the state. And so GAL, CASA, if your kid doesn't have one, advocate for them to have one. I'm knee deep in becoming licensed for teens. Us too. Oh my gosh, we just moved states. Do not ever, once you're licensed, do not ever move. Oh my gosh, we're getting relicensed, and we are also knee deep. What's one big thing I should know, but no one else is going to tell me? Don't look at the kid's file. That's what I would tell you. I would say, you know, that file is the first impression, and tell the kid you're not looking at their file, because that file is the first impression that you get of the kid. And the way we see kids affects the way that they see themselves. And if you look at that kid's file, they're going to have to dig themselves out of a 70-foot hole. And it's just not fair, because when a kid gets to go to a new home, they should have a new beginning. And when they go to a new home, the file doesn't give them a new beginning. But that's really what we should be giving kids, a fresh start and a new hope. And so I would challenge you. I know foster parents that do this. I promise it's possible. It's crazy, but I think it really allows for you to start a relationship with your child in a way that allows them to present themselves the way that they truly want to be presented, and it allows you to uplift them in the way that into who they really want to be. And of course, there are things in their files that maybe you actually do have to know, and maybe that's what you'd ask the caseworker. What are the things I have to know? And know that, again, caseworkers, I'm not knocking on your jobs, but know that caseworkers have so much work, and sometimes they might be exaggerating. Sometimes the things that they say might be maybe a little emotional, because they go through so much, they experience so much. Like, people don't consider that caseworkers are considering, they like experience secondhand trauma all the time. And so I would say take it lightly. And also, if there are caseworkers on this webinar, and I would say the same thing to your question as you get licensed, is I would encourage you to step into your own healing journey. We all have baggage. Especially those of us who don't think we have baggage. It is the times when I'm like, I don't have any baggage. I'm doing really well right now. I like realize I have, like, that was the season that I had the most baggage. And so work towards your own healing journey, whether that's, it doesn't have to be therapy. It can be just in community. It can be reading books and reflecting. But ask yourself what that might look like for you, because when you get into the foster care system, your worst wounds are going to be revealed, and they are going to be, and this is just parenting in general, like if this happens with my biological kids, the worst parts of you come out. And we want to be whole and healed for our children, because we want them to be whole and healed. Do you do speaking engagements? Yes, I do. You can go to my website, Tori Hope Peterson /speaking. I do speaking engagements all over, but I am not in North Carolina. I live in Defiance, Ohio, in a small rural town. But I'm happy to speak wherever, whenever, if I am available. Oh, look, Kimberly, yes, check out this. What is my relationship like with my birth parents? I just found out about 3 years ago that my biological dad passed away before I was born, and a month before I was born. And that was the narrative that I grew up with. So that wasn't like a super hard thing to hear, but I did always think that my mom was lying to me when she told me that. So there was honestly like this weird joy that came with hearing that, because I was like, wow, my mom wasn't lying to me. And my birth mom, I have a relationship with her. I would not say it's like good or healthy. It is very challenging because of her mental illness, but I always go back. There's a scripture, it's my favorite scripture, John 13:35, and it says, they will know us by our love for one another. They will know we are his disciples by our love for one another. And I always go back to that. You know, I want my mom to know the Lord. That's the only thing that has saved me, and it's the only thing that's kept me. I want my mom to experience that kind of healing. And so I just try my best to continue to love her so that she'll know the Lord. But it's a very challenging relationship. I have to forgive over and over and over again, but Christ makes it easier because he forgives me. And I am just as fallen as her. It just looks different. This is so nice. Every reel, every post, every story you tell brings me to tears. As an adoptive and foster and bio mom, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for following along. The people who have followed along on the Instagram journey, the OGs, I appreciate you so much. I wouldn't have the platform I have without you. It's really hard when the majority of your platform is attached to a social media platform. But you guys have really made it worth it. And so if you have been following me on Instagram for a long time, if you have been a part of that first 20,000, I just like love you, and I'm so thankful for you. And you are seriously the people. It is getting your guys' messages day in and day out, hearing your stories, reading your stories in my DMs. Like, it can be so exhausting, y'all, like getting all your DMs, but let me tell you, it is the thing that keeps me going. And I'm so, so grateful for it.
Hey, Tori, I've got two more questions that came over here on the private chat side. So let's start with, we'll start with the longer one. How about that? Where do you feel, so you bring a very unique perspective to this, because you have already mentioned about going through the licensing process and now the relicensing process because of your move. And also with your history with it, where do you feel that the system is succeeding? And where do you think it could really grow or do better?
So this is really a twofold question. Like, I'm going to give you the same answer. I think where the system is really succeeding, when it comes to the government, like, I don't know how to answer that. I think that I'm pretty jaded in terms of the government aspect of it. But I think where the system is succeeding is the church. I think that the church is picking up the mantle and serving the orphan and the widow. They're starting to understand more what that means in terms of of justice in terms of really answering the call and of doing the hard things. I think there are a lot of people who want to be comfortable in their Christianity, but Christianity is not comfortable, and it's not a club, it's a call. And so that means that we have to step into hard things, and foster care is that. So I think that the church is really understanding that. I read a statistic the other day that said 70% of foster parents attend weekly religious services, Christian services. And so that's just very encouraging to me. At the same time, I think where the system needs to improve is, more people getting involved. And I would say, the church, I would say people in general, but also the church, because this really is what God has called us to. And if we look at the life of Jesus, we see that he loved the marginalized. He loved the people that were outcast and put out. And those are the people in the foster care system. And so I think that the foster care system does a not so good job at marketing foster care. When we see the signs, right? Have you ever seen a sign that says be a mentor for a kid in foster care? No. The signs that we always see is be a foster parent today, which is a lie because we know it takes months. And so the marketing of foster care is not honest. And then so when people actually step into it, first off, they're like, whoa, I thought this was going to take a day. And like, it's actually going to take me a year or like 6 months. And the other thing is we should be marketing foster care, stepping into it as you can be a mentor. You can use what you have right where you are and just love on one kid. Because if we look at what my track coach did, that's what he did. He was a track coach, and he just continued to be a track coach, and he loved his one athlete a lot, and that's why I am where I am today. And there were a ton of people in the church that did that. They just used what they had. I didn't know how to do my hair when I was younger, and so I had a woman who came and took me into her salon from the church, and she helped me do my hair often. And that is one of the ways that I learned how to take care of my hair. And so and she owned the salon, by the way. So like use what you have right where you are. Look at the kids who are needing help and bring them into you. But the foster care system, we advertise it as just be foster parents. So I think that's something that we could really improve on. It's just telling people that you can be involved in a multitude of ways.
Go ahead, Tori. There was one more question that came up in the chat.
Yeah, I think there are two. Are all foster children traumatized? Yes. All foster children are traumatized. I think we actually all are traumatized. It just comes in different variants. It comes in different capacities. But I think that, yes, all foster children are, because being taken from your biological family, even if maybe that family, the first family wasn't that bad, and then your foster homes aren't that bad. Being ripped from the family that you're supposed to be with is scary. That's traumatizing. It's unnatural. And what would I recommend for self-care? I really do not, when it comes to self-care, I don't feel like there's a one size fits all. I really think that's something that, again, you have to kind of discern and try a bunch of different things to see what you enjoy or what fills your cup. For me, like I am 1,000,000% an extrovert. So like I can go to, so say I go to a book launch party, right? That like all the people coming up to me there, that might be draining to me, but then I could go home and I could throw a party with those who are closest to me, which I love. This is my like filling my cup. I'm throwing a party tomorrow, 1 week out from book launch, and I'm like throwing a party. Throwing the party with like, we're gonna make charcuterie boards and teaching everyone how to make charcuterie boards. And with just the people, like the girls in my community who are closest to me, and I know that's gonna fill my cup. And to other people will be like, to a lot of people that would sound very draining, to throw a party. And so I would say you have to figure out what is your thing. To some parents, being with their kids fills them up. For me, Like being a mom does not come natural to me in any capacity. And that has been one of the hardest things about my adulthood. When you don't have a mom to guide you, it can be like, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? And I just always feel like I'm kind of out of place. And so I often have to take time away from my children, which everyone does, but I think I maybe have to take more time away from my children, unfortunately. So I would say, like, learn your rhythms, learn your patterns. There's a really good book by Rebecca Lyons called Rhythms of Rest, or Rhythms of Renewal. That's what's called, Rhythms of Renewal. I would encourage you to read that book. It's encouraging, and it has helped me learn how to kind of take inventory in my life. It's taught me how to do it with my husband, and how to figure out rest, because I'm actually really bad at it. I actually shouldn't even answer that question. I probably should have said I'm actually really bad at it. What shared parenting activities did you like, if any? What did you not like? Do you have any advice for foster parents on how to make shared parenting work for the kids first and foremost? I don't know what that language means. Can someone tell me what shared parenting activities is? Or shared parenting works? Can someone tell me what that means?
Yeah, so shared parenting would be, so my family and I are currently in that situation where one of the children who's in our home right now, she has unsupervised visits with bio mom right now, currently just once a week. But she is not at overnight visits. But that shared parenting would be like us communicating back and forth, everything from as simple as like getting her to where she needs to be on Saturday mornings when it's time for her to have her unsupervised visit, to what pickup's going to look like, to doing shared parenting activities like let's go to the park together and spend time together as a whole family, which includes the other children that are in my household and your family as well. So there's a wide definition for what we could look like with shared parenting. And so Sarah, certainly jump in here if I'm not reflecting well what you're asking with shared parenting.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I understand what she's asking now. I would say, and Sarah, yeah, hop in if you're like, Tori, this is not what I meant. I think I did not experience shared parenting because it was just never like a thing that I wanted to go back with my mom or that I could go back with my mom. So I didn't necessarily have experience with this, but when my husband and I were fostering a sibling group of 3, we really tried to love on birth parents. I try to remember, I'm this like beloved foster youth. And I try to remember that I could have very easily ended up in her position, and my kids could very easily be where her kids are. And that creates a lot of empathy in me for her. And so ask yourself, I guess, questions in a way that allows you to have empathy for your birth parents. I think that's a really good place to start. And then I think when it comes to, I think sometimes something I see is that foster parents use caseworkers as the middleman, right? They don't want to give their phone number out. Go to like an app like Grasshopper or Google number, get a fake phone number. If you really don't, we just give our numbers out. It's gonna come and bite us in the butt someday, maybe. It hasn't yet though. But the thing is, like, they cannot attack you over the phone. And really, like, I want them to feel human, because I would give my phone number to pretty much anyone else. So create a fake number, your fake like Google number, so that they can contact you. Take out the caseworker as the middleman and have contact with them. Send them pictures. I remember when we were fostering that sibling group of 3, pictures meant the world to her. And I would always ask her, am I sending too many pictures? Because I never wanted her to see oh, look, your kids are doing so much better here. And so I'd ask her, do you want to see pictures? And she always wanted pictures, but pictures meant the world to her. And so you have to kind of build some kind of relationship with biological parents, I think, to know what is best in shared parenting for the child and for that biological parent. And that is done when you cut out the middleman. So I would encourage you, get a fake number, cut out the middleman, and try and build a texting relationship with that foster parent and with that biological parent. And remember, you can always go into your phone and hit block. And it could just, if it's too much, and we did that at times where we would just be like, this is way too much. I'm just blocking the number so I don't get the messages, because I will literally work off my phone. If you, like I said, if you guys know me, if you're the Instagram people, I'm always on my phone. And so there were times where I had to be like, okay, we're blocking her for the day. But then we would circle back the next day and be like, hey, we're on your team, we're on your side, what's up? How are you doing today? So really try and build that relationship.
I really want to echo that sentiment of building that relationship. It can be a powerful thing on both ways.
Yeah, Beth, and I'll build on it a little more. What we did, Beth just kind of asked a question of like how, again, I'm really encouraged, like texting is just such an easy way to do it. And something, I think that I have experienced a lot is birth parents thinking that we're trying to steal their kids. And so that's something that I always reassure birth parents is, I'm not here to steal your kids. I'm on your team. I'm on your side. I'm cheering for you. I cannot tell you how many times I said that to our kiddos' birth parents. Like, I'm cheering for you. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. And the caseworkers didn't like this. And again, I think it depends on your caseworkers and if you're in a Christian or a secular or space. But we always told her we loved her. We always said, we love you. We love you so much. And they were like, why didn't you tell her that? But it was like, because we do. Like, there's Christ's love is in us, and we love her because of that. So I guess I'd be scared of that intimacy, especially over text message, because it's just a text message, and it really can build something really special. And then sometimes ask them questions if it's appropriate. I'm putting your daughter to bed tonight. Is there anything you want me to tell her? Is there any kind of book you want me to read to her tonight? Is there any kind of tradition you want me to carry on when she's in our home? Because that's going to make that birth parent feel heard and like she's a part of it. More than a lot of foster parents let birth parents be a part of things.
So just real quick, as you're going down, I just want to acknowledge that we are to be respectful of everybody's time, including yours, Tori. Again, thank you. We are in 8 minutes until we wrap. We can certainly keep going, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time that was initially agreed upon. So, and I definitely want to also make sure that we give Rachel a opportunity to tell us a little bit more about Hope and Vine, and also the book event for next week, to do a plug-in for that. So Tori, I'm going to take a little guidance from you on if you would like to continue answering some more of these questions, or do we want to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel? How would you like to?
How about I'll do this one last question from Jennifer, and then we can turn it over to Rachel. How's that sound?
Great. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Tori.
So, Jennifer asked, our adopted daughter struggles with feeling fully like a part of our family. Are there any tips aside from praying and loving her? Yes. I'm gonna tell you a story. So my track coach, he ended up taking me into his family, ended up welcoming me into his family and adopting me. My last name became his last name, and his family really made me like a part of their family. Christmas presents, matching stockings, like all the details. They were so good at making sure that I wasn't this extra, like I was really a part of everything. They would post, I remember like my sisters would post things about me, and they would be like, this is the best decision my dad's ever made. And stuff like that. I'd be like, wow, like they really love me. And then I graduated college, and I went and built my own family, and I was like, okay, they're probably not gonna be my family anymore. Like that, they were just like a stand-in for college. And then my grandma ended up helping me and my husband. She gave us $1,000 to purchase our first house. And my grandma, I'm saying my adoptive dad's mom. And that, like, I know that's like some like money, and there's so much weird stuff around, talking about money. It's very taboo. But that like was such a solidifying moment for me. I was like, oh, like that just seemed like so much money to me. It seemed like such a big act of kindness, such a sacrifice. It was so generous. And I was like, oh wow, like they really do see me as a part of this family. They really do, like they're gonna go like the extra mile to show me. And they did that in more ways than that, like, you know, the extra stockings. I'm making sure that my Christmas presents like matched their Christmas presents, and in some way they included me in family pictures. Like always made sure that they invited me. I was a part of the group family chat. And I know, you know, like when it comes to your adopted daughter, probably like, are you doing these things? But recognize that, like, right, they did all these things, and then there came a point where I was like, oh yeah, they probably don't really think that I belong here. And then like they just kept doing the things, and it was in continuing to be consistent, continuing to be faithful, that I was like, okay, like they really want me here, like they really do love me. And there are still moments where my adoptive dad and my sister actually went out for his birthday, and they like went out last minute, and they were like, I live like an hour away, so they didn't like invite me. And I was like, oh my gosh, they didn't invite me, like I'm really not a part of this family. And I'm 26 years old. This was literally like 3 months ago. And they texted me, and they're like, hey, we just wanted you to know this is a really last minute decision, and we didn't forget about you. We just didn't think you would be able to make it like in the hour. And I was like, oh wow, like they're thinking about me. And so I think just like that communication of like, we're thinking about you, we're considering you in all things, like you aren't an extra. They just continue to remind me of that all the time.
Tori, thank you so much for your time tonight, and just for bringing all of your knowledge and experience to this space. And I, as a licensed foster parent, I am certainly so appreciative of everything that you have brought to the table tonight, and just what you have shared out. And so I thank you for that vulnerability and your openness.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, I'm going to go ahead and give you the microphone and let you just share a little more.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, and we were already very excited about hosting this book launch party for Tori, but now I'm like getting all kinds of giddy, and yeah, very excited to have her here in Raleigh with us. So I'm one of the OGs with her Instagram. So we followed her back a few years ago. Got connected with her. She was actually our guest speaker when we had to do our gala online back in 2020. So she was able to be our guest speaker for that. So this is a beautiful moment to be able to circle back for this. So Hope and Vine, we're a nonprofit in Wake County, and we provide employment, mentoring, and community for young women who have aged out of foster care. So they, the employment piece, they work as artisans, they make jewelry, apparel, and accessories. And then we have a community component where we meet together for dinner. Some weeks we just simply play board games, and they hang out with my kids, and it's just a fun time in my home. Sometimes we'll have guest speakers come in and teach on a topic. And then through both the employment and the community piece, we are able to build these authentic relationships and provide mentoring. And like Tori was saying, use what you have, like be a mentor. So I was going through the process to become foster parent. My husband and I, we finished that process, and we were in the paperwork limbo stage. And in our classes was when we learned about what happens when youth age out. And we were just truly ignorant that was even a thing until we went through those classes. And we did become foster parents, but really my heart has always been for teens and young adults. And so so in that paperwork limbo stage, I already had a jewelry business and a writing ministry. And just one day the Lord made it very clear, like this was how I could help these young women by giving them the opportunity of employment. I would have that opportunity to build those relationships. So that's what we do. We've been around for about 3.5 years now, and looking to expand into multiple locations. And so we're excited about what's to come.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing out about that. Again, for those of you who are in the area or have the means to get to the Raleigh area, Tori is going to be here on August 30th. You can come celebrate that book launch party. That is going to be, I'm sorry, I forgot the location. I believe it's Crossroads.
No, 7 Marks.
Just kidding. That's what I said. 7 Marks.
It's like a half a mile down the road. You'll find it.
You can come celebrate that book launch party, and also wish my wife a happy birthday, because she was like, we've got to go for my birthday to go see Tori Peterson. And I was like, absolutely. So we're really excited to have Tori out here in North Carolina next week. With that said, so I mentioned to you guys that there's going to be a little evaluation. I'm going to drop that link right here in the chat for you. It is going to be our gift to all of you who are present, not if you're watching the recording, sorry guys, but if you're here live and in person on this recording and I can see your name in the little box, it is going to be a gift from FFA to you that we will be purchasing directly from Tori and the publisher, a copy of her book that we will be able to send your way. And then Tori, I believe, is going to follow up to either myself or to Gail with the resource that was asked about earlier this evening, so we can make sure we share that out. Make sure in your evaluation that if you are interested in obtaining that resource material, please make sure you put that in the evaluation notes. There will be a section for you to be able to do that as you turn it in. And with that said, I'm going to wish you all a great evening. Again, Tori, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. I look forward to seeing both of you next week in person. Woo! And coming out to the book launch party. And the rest of you, hope to see you around sometime. Real quick, some of the questions we didn't get to. Some of these questions are ones that FFA, we exist to serve the state community and the foster care community in this way. If we didn't get to your question, please don't hesitate to reach out to FFA. We will be more than happy to respond to some of those questions. Some of those are really great questions that we are here to serve and here to serve you. And I hope you all have a great evening.